My name is Agnes, and 6 months ago I buried my husband, Walter. 6 months and 12 days, to be exact. He was eating toast at the kitchen table when his heart simply stopped. Quick and clean, the doctor said, as if that was a comfort. After 52 years of marriage, I was left with a half-finished crossword, a cold cup of tea, and a silence so profound it felt like its own presence in the house. The grief was a physical thing, a heavy, wet cloak I wore every day. But I kept busy. The paperwork of death is a full-time occupation. Probate, insurance, banks, bills. It was a blessing in its way, all those forms and phone calls. They gave the days a shape. My son Peter was a blessing too, or so I thought. "Mom, let me handle all of this," he'd said, standing in Walter's study, his face the picture of filial concern. "You shouldn't have to wade through these financial swamps right now. Just focus on taking care of yourself." Peter was a financial planner, successful. He lived with his wife, Celia, and their 2 girls in a beautiful modern house in the hills, drove a car that cost more than Walter's first workshop, and seemed to have the world neatly solved. I was grateful, relieved. I signed the papers giving him access, power of attorney over the investment accounts Walter had spent a lifetime building. It seemed the sensible thing to do. This morning, I sat in the office of Martin Croft, Walter's financial advisor of 30 years. Martin was a methodical man, Walter's kind of person. Honest as the day is long. His office smelled of old leather and sharpened pencils. He hadn't called me in for our usual review. His voice on the phone had been strained, urgent. "Agnes, you need to come in. Today. And please, come alone." So here I was, watching Martin's hands, usually so steady, tremble slightly as he laid sheet after sheet of paper across the polished mahogany desk between us. Bank statements, transfer records, investment summaries. His face was pale. "Agnes," he began, then stopped, clearing his throat. "Sarah, I don't know any gentle way to say this. Peter has been systematically diverting funds from your and Walter's accounts for approximately 8 years. The numbers blurred before my eyes. Not a mistake, not a poor investment. Diverting, a polite word for theft. $15,000 here, $25,000 there. Transfers to accounts I'd never heard of, with explanations forged in Walter's shaky handwriting from after his stroke. Investment opportunity. Portfolio rebalancing. Emergency fund. The total," Martin said, his voice dropping, "is just shy of $2 million. The air left the room. $2 million. Walter's life's work, our security, the legacy he'd wanted to leave for me, for the girls. "Look at the pattern," Martin continued, pointing a trembling finger. "The major withdrawals, they always coincide with Walter's health crises. His bypass surgery 4 years ago, $300,000 moved to an offshore holding company. When he was in for pneumonia 2 winters back, another $150,000 vanished. A cold, hard stone settled in my gut, colder than the grief. It wasn't random, it was strategic. He was counting on Walter dying," I said, my own voice sounding strange to me, flat. "And then on me, dying of grief or being too confused to notice, so he could finish the job." Martin didn't contradict me. He just gave a small, pained nod. "That is my assessment, yes. With Walter gone, and you, distraught, he could have liquidated everything, claimed catastrophic market losses or medical debts. You'd have been none the wiser." I thought of Peter's arm around me at the funeral. His voice, so soft, so caring. "Don't you worry about a thing, Mum. I've got it all under control." He hadn't been managing my grief. He'd been managing his cover. "How much is left?" I asked. Martin consulted another document. "Of your liquid investments and savings, about $1.8 million. The house is yours, free and clear. and Walter's life insurance policy, which names you as the sole beneficiary, is intact for $750,000. Peter couldn't touch that. So, not penniless, but robbed, betrayed, by my only child. A strange calm descended over me. The vague, woolly sadness of the last 6 months burned away in an instant, replaced by a clarity as sharp and bright as shattered glass. I looked at those damning numbers, at the evidence of my son's patient, years-long treachery, and I realized something. The only problem with Peter's plan was that I was very much alive, and suddenly I was very, very angry. I drove home from Martin's office in a silent daze. The familiar streets of my neighborhood, the autumn leaves clinging to the old oaks, the well-kept gardens, it all looked like a stage set, a fiction. The manila envelope on the passenger seat seemed to radiate a sickening heat. My house, the one Walter and I had shared for 40 years, felt different when I walked in. It was no longer just my empty, quiet sanctuary. It felt like the scene of a crime that was still in progress. Every family photo on the mantelpiece, Peter as a gap-toothed boy, Peter graduating, Peter with his daughters on his shoulders, now seemed like a carefully staged lie. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Walter had taken his last breath, and opened my laptop. Time to see the full picture. Peter and Celia's life was a glossy brochure of success. Their social media was a curated gallery of luxury, ski trips to Switzerland, summers in the south of France, Celia at charity galas in dresses that cost more than my first car. The girls at their exclusive private school with its famed equestrian program, the new kitchen extension with the professional range, the sports car. I started a list. The house, purchased 3 years ago for $1.5 million, Celia's jewelry, the country club membership, the private school fees at $40,000 per child, per year. I'd always felt a vague pride at their success, mixed with a faint, unvoiced bewilderment. Peter's financial planning practice was respectable, but this was Fortune 500 executive wealth. The math, as they say, did not math. My phone rang, lighting up with Peter's name and a photo of him smiling. My stomach twisted. "Mom, just checking in. How's your day been?" His voice was warm syrup, the caring sun tone he'd perfected. "Oh, you know, quiet, errands." I aimed for weary vagueness. "You sound tired. Are you sleeping? Eating properly?" Yesterday, this would have felt like love. Today, it felt like surveillance. He was checking on his investment, making sure the confused old widow was still in her box. "I'm managing. Actually, Peter, I was thinking about the investments, Walter's affairs. Maybe it's time I tried to understand it all a bit better." The silence on the other end was brief but absolute, a vacuum of surprise. "Mom, you don't need to trouble yourself with that," he said, the syrup now with a steel backbone. "That's why you have me. You just focus on healing." "But I'd like to," I pressed gently. "Maybe we could look at the statements together." "Of course, absolutely. Let me pull everything together. We'll sit down soon. Maybe next month, when my calendar clears up a bit." Next month, the eternal postponement. How many times had he said that? "Actually, I'd rather do it this week. I actually spoke to Martin Croft today." This time, the silence was heavier, laden. "You called Martin? Why would you do that without mentioning it to me?" The steel was showing now, sharp and quick. "He was Walter's advisor for 30 years, Peter. I don't need permission." "No, of course not. We should coordinate. Keep things simple for you. What did you discuss?" I could see him in his sleek office, panic darting behind his eyes. The predator sensing a shift in the wind. "Just general things. Getting my bearings." I let the lie hang, a little hook. I heard his exhale, a controlled release of tension. "Good, good. Well, you know I'm here. Martin's old school. He can overwhelm you with details. I keep things simple." Simple, like I was a child. A dim, elderly child who couldn't be trusted with her own life. After he hung up, I sat in Walter's worn armchair. The ghost of his pipe tobacco still lingered in the fabric. I thought of the boy Peter had been, the one who cried when his goldfish died, who saved his pocket money to buy me a birthday brooch. When had that boy been replaced by this stranger? When had he started looking at his parents and seeing not family, but a resource? A mark? The doorbell rang. It was Eleanor from next door, my friend of 40 years. Sharp, unsentimental Eleanor, who had buried 2 husbands and fought off a avaricious nephew. "Agnes, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's happened?" I didn't have the words. I just led her to the dining table and spread Martin's evidence before her. She read in silence, her lips pressed into a thinner and thinner line. Finally, she looked up, her eyes blazing. "That thieving little bastard," she said with total clarity. "What's your plan?" Over a pot of strong tea that turned into a bottle of sherry, we devised Operation Reckoning. Eleanor was a strategic genius. "First," she said, "secure the remaining assets. Martin needs to lock everything down today. New bank, new accounts, new passwords. Cut off his access." "I've already asked him to." "Good girl. Second, the authorities. You go to the police. No, better. Go to the Specialist Financial Crime Unit. This is organized fraud. Martin is setting up a meeting." "Even better. Third," she leaned forward, "we gather intelligence. What does Peter value most? What would destroy him?" I knew instantly. His reputation. His image as the successful family man, the pillar of the community. Celia's social standing, the perfect life. "Exactly," Eleanor said, making a note. "So when this comes out, and it will, it needs to come out everywhere. Not just a quiet arrest, a collapse, a very public unraveling of the beautiful lie." The sherry warmed me, but it was the plan, the purpose, that truly heated my blood. For the first time in 6 months, I felt the fog of grief lift, burned away by a cleaner, fiercer flame, rage, and the determination for justice. The call from the Financial Crimes Unit came the next morning. Detective Inspector Rachel Vance. Her voice was cool, professional, devoid of pity, which I appreciated. We met in a bland, secure interview room. She reviewed Martin's files with the detached eye of a pathologist. "Mrs. Bellamy, this is a textbook case of sustained financial elder abuse. The paper trail is devastating. We'll need to open a formal investigation, which will involve searching your son's home and office. It will become public, and it will be ugly. Are you prepared for that?" I thought of Walter's face, his unwavering belief in doing the right thing, no matter how hard. D.I. Vance, my son stole $2 million from his father while he was ill, and from his mother while she grieved. If ugly is the price of stopping him, I'll pay it. A faint, approving smile touched her lips. "Then we begin. In the meantime, act normal. Don't let him suspect anything." Acting normal that Sunday at Peter's house was the hardest performance of my life. Their home was a monument to stolen money. The minimalist furniture, the statement art, the wine he poured, a $400 Burgundy. I sipped it, calculating its cost in stolen dollars. "Gran, watch this." My granddaughter, Lily, spun across the polished concrete floor, demonstrating a complex ballet sequence. "Beautiful, darling. You've gotten so strong." "Her teacher says she has a real chance," Celia beamed, adjusting her diamond studs. "She's been invited to the National Youth Ballet Intensive. It's in New York for 6 weeks this summer." "How wonderful. And expensive, I imagine." Celia waved a manicured hand. "Oh, the program fee is $20,000, plus flights and living costs. But it's an investment in her future." $20,000. A sum Walter would have saved for over a year, paid for with money he thought was securing my future. After dinner, Peter led me to his home office, a sleek space designed to broadcast success. He showed me a simplified budget of my expenses, utilities, groceries, insurance, a pittance. "See, Mom, you're all set. Walter did a great job." "It's reassuring," I said, But I'd love to see the bigger picture, the investment accounts, the statements. His smile tightened. Those are complex, Mum. Market terminology, asset classes. It would just confuse you. I'll summarize it all for you next month. The patronizing cage. Next month. Always next month. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone with an innocent blink, Martin gave me the new online passwords. I could just log in and take a look. The blood drained from Peter's face. New passwords? Yes, for security. Didn't he tell you? He must have forgotten to mention it. The panic was back, barely contained. Mum, what exactly did you and Martin discuss? Time to push. Oh, just the accounts. I noticed some large withdrawals over the years. For investment opportunities. I was curious what they were. Those were high-yield vehicles, private equity, very sophisticated. He was floundering. I'd love to see the statements for those, to understand. The documentation is incredibly technical. I'm sure I could manage, I said sweetly. It's my money, after all. His phone rang, a saving grace. He stepped out, but I caught the hissed fragments through the door. Asking too many questions, change the passwords, need to be careful. When he returned, the mask had shifted from son to condescending professional. Mom, I'm worried these financial questions are a symptom of anxiety. Have you thought about speaking to a grief counselor? There it was, the gaslighting. My legitimate concerns were to be pathologized, dismissed as the ramblings of a confused old woman. I met his gaze squarely. What an interesting idea, Peter. Though Martin said my questions showed excellent mental clarity, he was quite impressed. The ride home was charged with a cold fury. He knew I was no longer compliant. The game had changed. D.I. Vance's call came at dawn. Mrs. Bellamy were executing the search warrants now, on his home and office. Stay inside. And you might want to watch the news. I sat in Walter's chair, a blanket around my shoulders, and turned on the television. By 7 a.m., it was the lead story. Helicopter footage showed figures in forensic jackets carrying boxes from Peter's beautiful house. His neighbor, a pompous architect, was being interviewed, spluttering about a terrible mistake. My phone exploded. Eleanor first. By God, Agnes, you did it! Then Celia, her voice a shrill wire of panic. Agnes! There are police everywhere! They're taking our computers, our files. What is happening? I imagine they're investigating financial crimes, dear. You should call a lawyer. Financial crimes? Peter has been stealing from Walter and me for 8 years, Celia. Nearly $2 million. The FBI has all the evidence. You might want to think about how you'll explain your house and your jewelry to a judge. The silence was pure, ringing shock. Then the line went dead. The hardest call was from Lily, my eldest granddaughter, whispering from a school bathroom. Gran, is Dad going to jail? My heart shattered and reformed harder. Yes, sweetheart, he is. He did very wrong things. Are we going to be poor? The fear in her voice was a physical ache. You will be safe and loved. That's my job now. I'll pick you up from school. Facing the media scrum at the girls' private school was a trial by fire. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted. I walked through it with my head high, holding Lily and her sister Chloe close. They clung to me, their faces pale with confusion and shame. In the car, Chloe, the younger one, finally spoke through tears. Jake Miller said Dad's a crook and we're gonna be homeless. I pulled over and took their hands. Listen to me. Your father's choices are his. They are not yours. You are not defined by this. You are smart, kind girls, and you are loved. We will get through this, together. That evening, a shell-shocked Celia appeared on my doorstep. The perfect wife was gone. In her place was a frightened, hollow-eyed woman in rumpled clothes. The accounts are frozen. The house. They say it's an asset bought with proceeds of crime. I have nowhere to go. I looked past her at my granddaughter's terrified faces. However complicit Celia had been in her willful ignorance, the girls were blameless. You can stay here, for now. The girls need stability. My conditions were strict: total honesty, cooperation with the investigation, and acknowledgement that their luxury was my theft. Celia crumpled, weeping with relief. I didn't know, Agnes. I swear, I just didn't want to look. It was the first honest thing she'd ever said to me. Peter's lawyer, a slick man named Donovan, found me 3 weeks later. We met at Martin's office. Mrs. Bellamy, my client is prepared to make full restitution, every cent, with interest. In return, we ask for your understanding in court, a victim impact statement that highlights his remorse, the family context. It could shave years off his sentence. He slid a figure across the table. $2.3 million more than he'd taken. The stolen money, it seemed, had been reinvested. He'd gambled with our life savings and won. Where is this money coming from, Mr. Donovan? Successful investments, Mrs. Bellamy. The point is, it's available. For the sake of your grandchildren, for the family. I laughed then, a dry, brittle sound that stopped him cold. My son stole from his dying father. He targeted other elderly clients, too. He built his life on the plundered security of vulnerable people. And you want me to ask a judge for leniency because we share DNA? I stood. Tell Peter he will get the victim impact statement he deserves. I will tell the judge exactly who he is and what he did. He deserves every day of the maximum sentence. As I left, I felt Walter's presence, steady and approving at my shoulder. The trial was a brutal, clinical unveiling. Peter sat diminished in his suit. The evidence was irrefutable. Celia testified, a broken figure admitting her willful blindness. Then it was my turn. The prosecutor led me to the emotional core. Mrs. Bellamy, what has this theft cost you, beyond the money? I looked at my son, and for the first time spoke my truth directly to him, in a place he could not escape it. It cost me my son. For 8 years I had a stranger in his skin. Every hug, every "I love you" was part of the performance to keep me docile while he picked my pocket. He waited for his father to die, and then he waited for my grief to finish me, so he could take the rest. He didn't just steal money. He stole my peace, my trust, and the memory of my own family. Peter broke then, sobbing openly into his hands. I felt nothing but a vast, clean emptiness. The jury took 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Peter finally spoke. Mom, I have no excuses. I was greedy. I thought I was smarter. I wanted the life without the work. Dad died trusting me to care for you, and I was planning to rob you blind. Thank you for stopping me. He looked at the judge. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking that this be a warning. Judge Whitaker was unmoved. You preyed on the vulnerable, starting with your own parents. You traded on love and trust. 15 years in federal prison. Full restitution to all victims. As they led him away, he caught my eye one last time. In his, I saw not a plea, but a bleak, clear understanding, and something that might, one day, become respect. It has been a year now. The girls live with me full-time. Celia, after intensive therapy, has a small job and an apartment nearby. We are a unit, forged in fire. Peter writes me letters from prison. They are stark, honest. No pleas. Just a slow, painful reconstruction of a conscience. You saved me from becoming worse, he wrote last month. Thank you for loving me enough to send me here. Today I sit on my porch with Eleanor, watching Lily and Chloe plant tulip bulbs in Walter's old garden bed. The sun is warm. The house is full of life and noise, homework arguments, pop music, the smell of baking. Any regrets? Eleanor asks, passing me a glass of lemonade. I look at my granddaughters, their faces earnest in the spring light. I think of the other elderly victims who got their money back because I came forward. I think of Walter. No, I say, and I mean it. Not one. The grief for Walter is still there, a soft, familiar ache. The betrayal by Peter is a scar, but I am no longer a victim in my own story. I am Agnes Bellamy. I am 71 years old. I survived my husband's death, discovered my son's crime, and brought him to justice. Now, I am raising my granddaughters to be women of integrity. And I sleep very, very well at night. The quiet after the storm was a new kind of music. It wasn't the silence of loneliness after Walter died, nor the tense quiet before Peter's arrest. This was the peaceful, purposeful hum of a household rebuilding. Lily and Chloe's laughter in the garden, Celia's hesitant footsteps as she learned her way around my kitchen, the rustle of homework papers at the dining table. These were the sounds of my new life. But peace, I was learning, is not a permanent state. It's a series of choices, and some choices have consequences that ripple outward. One afternoon, a letter arrived, not from the prison, but on expensive, creamy stationery. The return address was the Willow Creek Country Club. My hands went cold. I knew that name. It was the temple of Celia's former social life, where the membership fees had been paid with stolen dividends from Walter's engineering firm. Dear Mrs. Bellamy, it began. The Board of Governors respectfully requests a private meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss matters pertaining to the membership of your son, Peter Bellamy, and his family. We understand this is a sensitive time, but certain financial discrepancies require resolution. They weren't requesting, they were summoning. And the word discrepancies was a genteel glove over an iron fist. They wanted their money back, or they wanted blood. Likely both. Celia found me at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hand. Her face, which had slowly been regaining some color, drained anew. They're going to blacklist us, she whispered, a world of old fears in her eyes. The girls, they're friends. Friends who would abandon them over this weren't friends at all, I said, but my voice lacked its usual conviction. The social world was a weapon, and I knew how deeply its cuts could scar a teenage girl. I called Eleanor. She arrived with a legal pad and a ruthless glint in her eye. Right, the vultures are circling. Good. Let's feed them something that gives them indigestion. Eleanor's plan was audacious. You don't go to them, they come to you, and you don't go alone. The meeting was set for my living room. I wore my best dress, the pearl earrings Walter had given me for our 40th anniversary. Armor. At my right sat Eleanor. At my left, to her own visible terror, sat Celia. Facing us were 3 members of the club's board: Charles Wyndham, a silver-haired titan of industry, his wife Pamela, whose smile was as sharp as her cheekbones, and the club treasurer, a nervous man named Forsyth. Wyndham began with practiced sympathy. Mrs. Bellamy, our deepest condolences for your family's difficulties. We're here strictly on club business. It appears the dues for the last 5 years, along with significant bar and event charges, were settled from accounts now frozen or deemed illicit. He slid a sheet across the coffee table. The total was staggering, over $150,000. These are debts the club is owed, Pamela Wyndham added, her tone making it clear she considered the money as good as spent on vermin. I let the number hang in the air. Then I smiled, a small, polite smile I'd learned from watching the Queen on television. I see. And you believe I am responsible for these debts? The membership was in your son's name, but the family benefited, Wyndham started. The family, I interrupted gently, was unaware that the funds used were stolen. My daughter-in-law and granddaughters are victims, Mr. Wyndham, not co-conspirators. As for me, I am the primary victim from whom the money was stolen. You are, in effect, asking me to pay for my own robbery. Forsyth, the treasurer, squirmed. Charles Wyndham's jaw tightened. The club's bylaws are clear. Debts must be settled. Eleanor spoke for the first time, her voice like dry ice. And what do your bylaws say about accepting illicit funds, Charles? What does the press, who so enjoyed the spectacle of Peter's arrest, think about a prestigious club happily laundering stolen pension money for 5 years without a single question? I'm sure the Financial Review would find the due diligence procedures, or lack thereof, fascinating. Pamela Wyndham's smile vanished. I pressed the advantage. I propose a solution. The club writes off this debt. In return, we sign a mutual non-disclosure agreement. The Bellamy name quietly resigns. The club avoids a very public, very messy scandal about the provenance of its funds. A scandal that might make other members uneasy. The silence was profound. They had come for a pound of flesh from a grieving widow. They were not prepared for a counter-siege. 2 days later, a letter arrived. The debt was forgiven in light of the exceptional circumstances. There was no NDA. They simply wanted us gone. It was a victory, but it left a bitter taste. It showed me that Peter's crime had poisoned wells far beyond our bank accounts. That night, Chloe, who had been quiet since the country club letter arrived, finally spoke up during dinner. Sienna isn't allowed to have sleepovers with me anymore. Her mom said our family has bad judgment. Lily put down her fork, her eyes fierce. Then Sienna's mom is an idiot. But the damage was done. The social exile had begun. The ledger of Peter's theft wasn't just financial. It was a ledger of trust, reputation, and belonging, and we were all paying the deficit. The next ripple came from an unexpected source, Martin Croft. He called, his voice troubled. Agnes, I've been reviewing the forensic audit from the prosecution. There's a pattern I missed. Several of the shell companies Peter used. They weren't just empty vessels. They made payments. To a numbered digital account. A what? A cryptocurrency wallet. Bitcoin, likely. It's a ghost, untraceable by normal means. The prosecution didn't prioritize it. The fiat currency trail was enough for conviction. But it means there might be more money, I finished. Money Peter hadn't confessed to. Money that belonged to God knows who. D.I. Vance was interested but cautious. Tracking crypto used 8 years ago, especially if he used mixing services. It's a digital needle in a global haystack, and recovering it is another battle entirely. But the idea of hidden money, of an unresolved thread, gnawed at me. It represented Peter's lingering secrecy, a part of the crime still in shadow. I couldn't let it lie. I enlisted an unlikely ally, Chloe. At 14, she lived in a digital world I could barely comprehend. I explained it to her simply. Your father hid some of the money in a place online that's very hard to find. The police say it's almost impossible. She looked at me with Walter's shrewd, analytical eyes. What's the wallet address? What? The crypto wallet. It has a public address like an account number. Even if you can't take the money out, you can see if it's still there and if it's moved. Martin was able to provide the alphanumeric string from the bank records. That night, Chloe commandeered my laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up websites that looked like hieroglyphics to me. She plugged in the string. A page loaded. A blockchain explorer, she called it. There was a balance. My breath caught. 42.8 Bitcoin. Gran, Chloe said, her voice hushed. Do you know what this is worth now? I shook my head, dreading the answer. Her eyes were wide as she did a quick conversion. Over $2.5 million. The room spun. It was more than he'd stolen from us in the first place. A hidden fortune sitting in the digital ether. It hasn't moved since the first deposit 8 years ago, Chloe whispered. He just left it there. Why? A final escape fund he never used? A secret even from himself? The existence of this money changed everything and nothing. It was likely unrecoverable without the private key, a digital password Peter had taken to prison. But knowing it was there was a new weight. It was stolen property, floating in cyberspace. Whose was it? Ours? His other victims? I reported it to D.I. Vance. The investigation reopened. A minor thread. Experts were consulted. The conclusion was frustrating. Without Peter's cooperation, the funds were functionally lost. The ghost in the machine would remain a ghost. But the discovery did something to Chloe. The girl who had been retreating into sullen silence since her father's arrest now had a puzzle, a mystery where she held the key. She started reading about blockchain, about digital forensics. She stopped asking about sleepovers at Sienna's house. She started asking me about Walter, about how he built his business from nothing, about ethics. Peter had tried to build a legacy with stolen money. In a bitter twist, his crime was building a different kind of legacy in his daughter, a fierce curiosity and a burning desire to fix what was broken. The prison visiting room was a monument to sterile sadness. I hadn't planned to come. But the ghost of the Bitcoin fortune and Chloe's quiet obsession with it compelled me. I needed to look him in the eye one more time. Peter looked older than his 49 years. The expensive suit was replaced by a shapeless jumpsuit. The confident bluster was gone, sanded down to a raw, watchful stillness. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Mom?" "Peter." We sat across from each other, the scarred table between us. "The girls are well," I began. "Celia is working. Lily is focused on her studies. Chloe is becoming quite the computer expert." A flicker in his eyes. He knew where this was going. "I found the Bitcoin, Peter, the wallet, the 42.8. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they were clear, resigned. I forgot about that. In the early days, it was an experiment, a gamble. The price was so low then. I bought it with the first big withdrawal, just to see. Then, I suppose I buried it, a secret from myself. Why? Because even then, a part of me knew it was wrong. Hiding it there, it was like locking away evidence of my own corruption. I never intended to use it. I think I hoped I'd forget the keys. He leaned forward, his voice low, urgent. "Do you have access to it? Can you get it back?" "No, not without the private key." He nodded slowly. Then he did something extraordinary. He took the visitor's form and a pencil. On the back, he wrote a long, complex string of words, a bizarre, nonsensical phrase involving a jubilant oak, a vacant nebula, and a crimson pendulum. "My recovery phrase," he said, sliding it to me. 12 words. "This can recover the wallet. It's yours. Take it. Please, let it do some good." I stared at the words. This was the final key, the last secret. With this, the ghost could be made real. The money could be reclaimed. "What good, Peter? What good can stolen money do?" "Reparation," he said, the word costing him. "Not just to you. To the others. Ms. Gable, Mr. Chen." He named 2 of his other elderly victims I'd met during the trial. Their restitution came from my seized assets, but it wasn't enough to rebuild what they lost. This could be a true settlement, a clean end. I took the paper. The weight of it was immense. It was not an apology. It was an act of restitution, perhaps the first truly selfless one he'd ever offered. Back home, I gathered my counsel, Eleanor, Celia, and to her shock and pride, Chloe. I laid the paper on the table. "This belongs to all of us," I said. "It's blood money, but it exists. Peter gave me the key. He wants it used for reparations to his other victims." Eleanor was skeptical. "It's a trick, a last grab for sympathy." Celia was silent, her face a mask of conflict. Chloe stared at the words. "It's not a trick. The wallet's been dormant. He's giving up his last secret." She looked at me. "We should do it, Gran, but we do it right, through the court, so it's legal, so it's clean." Her words, so measured, so just, decided it. We contacted D.I. Vance and the prosecutor. A hearing was arranged. Peter, via video link from prison, formally and publicly relinquished all claim to the digital assets, directing they be converted and added to the victims' restitution fund. The news made a small headline: Convicts' hidden crypto fortune to repay victims. It was a footnote to the larger scandal, but it felt monumental to us. It was an ending. A week after the funds were distributed, I received a letter from Edith Gable, the retired teacher Peter had defrauded. Her handwriting was spidery but strong. Dear Agnes, the additional settlement has allowed me to secure a place in the assisted living facility I feared I'd lost. I will be safe now thanks to you. I know you suffered more than any of us. Your courage gave us justice. Your grace is giving us peace. I cried then for the first time in months. Not tears of grief or rage, but of a sorrow that was finally mixed with something like healing. Spring deepened into early summer. We were planting tomatoes, my ritual now shared with the girls, when a sleek, unfamiliar car pulled into the driveway. A woman in her late 40s got out. She was beautifully dressed in understated linen, but her posture was rigid with tension. Agnes Bellamy? I am. My name is Anya Petrova. I was a client of Peter's. The name sent a jolt through me. She wasn't on the victim list from the trial. Please, come in. Over tea, her story unfolded. She was a freelance graphic designer, a single mother. 5 years ago, after a small inheritance from her father, she'd engaged Peter to help her invest it for her son's future. He was so charming, so reassuring. He showed me statements, beautiful growth charts. Last year, when I wanted to withdraw some for my son's school fees, he gave excuses, delays. Then he was arrested. Her hands shook as she placed a thin file on the table. After the news, I went to the firm. They gave me this. The account, it's empty. The statements he gave me were fabrications. There was $85,000. It's gone. $85,000. Not a fortune to the country club set, but everything to this woman and her boy. The stone of anger I thought had dissolved reformed in my gut. Peter's predation had been even wider than we knew. I'm so sorry, I said, the words utterly inadequate. The restitution fund, it's been finalized, dispersed. The case is closed. Her face, already pale, seemed to crumble. I understand. I thought you should know. I needed to look you in the eye, the mother of the man who did this. I needed to see if you were like him. And am I? She studied me for a long moment, taking in my garden-stained hands, the simple kitchen, the photos of my granddaughters on the fridge. No, she said softly. You are not. After she left, a quiet fury settled over me. The official justice was done, but it had left gaps. Anya Petrova had fallen through one. The system considered the case solved, the perpetrator punished. But the damage was still radiating, hitting new victims. I couldn't replace her $85,000, but I couldn't do nothing. I called Martin Croft. Martin, I need a favor, a big one. Name it, Agnes. I want you to look at this woman's case, pro bono, help her untangle what's left, see if there's any recourse with the firm's insurance, anything. And I want you to audit Peter's old client list one more time, not for the prosecution, for us, to find anyone else he might have bled dry. It was the start of the reckoning, as Eleanor grandly called it, a private, post-legal mission. We became a tiny, unofficial Justice League. Martin handled the forensics. Eleanor used her network to find people too ashamed or confused to come forward. I met with them, the woman who had lost her husband's life insurance, the elderly couple whose safe bond investment had vanished. We couldn't give them their money back, but we could give them the truth and help them navigate the wreckage. It was exhausting, heart-wrenching work. But for every Anya Petrova we found, the heavy ledger of Peter's sins felt a little more balanced. We were writing the final chapters he had left blank.